Hey guys, welcome. Today I'm here with Matt and Carrie Ann. My name's Paul, and our question that we got is why do I feel more tired or stressed when my posture is poor?
There are a lot of answers and a lot of
Yeah.
reasons. I would say answer number one is all of your organs are, in your torso where your spine is. So if your spine is doing that, it is squishing all of your organs. So none of them are able to do their jobs to their fullest capacity if they're being crushed. Think about your lungs, number one. If you're hunching over, you're not going to take a big enough inhalation. You're not going to get enough oxygen. I think that's like probably the lowest hanging fruit in this answer. Number one, we need air to live and breathe and feel good. And if you're hunched over, you're just not getting a good breath.
Yeah, and then piggybacking off that too, like blood flow, circulation, right? So you need to deliver that oxygen to working tissues. So if your structure is not anatomically neutral, so say you find yourself rounded forward, like you were talking about, that closes off that thoracic abdominal cavity there, blood flow is impeded. Think of like kinking up the hose in that sense. So if you're not getting adequate circulation or blood flow to the tissues because there's tensions that are almost occluding that blood flow, then those tissues are going to fatigue. They're not getting their fuel as oxygen that they need to work properly. Then you'll start might feel like heavy, lethargic, muscles just aren't responding as it needs to. So yeah, the systemic piece is a huge one.
The one I think of the most is the vagal nerve response, which is so if we're off and like just our bite, let's say if our teeth are uneven and we don't bite when you bite down, if you don't connect like evenly in let's say one side, connects earlier than the other, or front versus back, that can also like trigger a vagal nerve response. So that's just in your bite. And so then, you think about all the pieces stacked up, your, pelvic position, your spine position, shoulders, how even they are, if you're rotated or rounded, one uneven shoulders, then that can, that's all the platform upon which your head sits. And so if that's off, then that can throw off your jaw. So that's just a like really small thing seemingly, but it has a huge response because the vagal nerve, you're now triggering your sympathetic response system versus going into a relaxation parasympathetic system response. And so that's going to like bring up more stress. So if you're already prone to like, oh, busyness of the day or worry, worry wards and thinking about like all the things you got to do and all that stuff, or just like pressures coming at you left and right, then that's not going to help because when you're then trying to decompress and go into relaxation, your posture is like saying, well, nope, sorry, not going to be able to do that very well because you're, off, asymmetrical.
Yeah, I guess that fight or flight response kicked up, right? Like you're talking about
Yeah.
that vagal nerve, like overstimulation or right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it goes into Carrie Ann's point about the organs and the breathing, and being able to take a deep breath and that oxygenation. That like breathing is such a big thing in terms of our
Yep.
parasympathetic response. Like
Yeah.
being able to slow down, and then to your point also about the like circulation occlusion and whatnot. Like our blood pressure goes up literally because the body's trying to overcompensate to deliver oxygen and whatnot. So it's like, okay, well, we have to increase heart rate, or we have to increase vasoconstriction, and so those are, contrary to what we need to truly relax and take the edge off.
Yeah, absolutely. And that word overcompensation too is another big piece of what we see, especially with posture and musculoskeletal side of things. Talk about the systemic, but then the musculoskeletal side is a big piece where, if the posture is misaligned or imbalanced, that then is causing certain muscle groups to overcompensate because there are other muscle groups that are under facilitated. They're not doing the job they need to do, in keeping the body aligned. And then those overcompensating muscles are overworking. So they're outputting more energy or outputting the energy expenditure that's unnatural, that's outside of their allotted, or pre-programmed energy expenditure. So if you have an overcompensating muscle or muscle groups, it's going to get tired faster, and it might get, irritated, inflamed, because of that chronic overworking, which will lead to that fatiguing or just feel like it's not responding. But what a common thing, clients actually had a client Sue today who we were talking about this too. It's like a lot of people will say, my legs just feel heavy or my arms just feel heavy. Like it feels like I'm walking through like molasses or like syrup or something, and if you're trying to move and you're just not getting that fluid movement or unimpeded movement, it's just taking a lot of effort to do, that's a good sign that along with the systemic stuff we're talking about, that there probably is some muscular overcompensation and under facilitation that's happening that's giving you those symptoms.
Yeah, and that's a great point because one of the things that we try to facilitate if people don't already have it is that kinesthetic awareness or that sense of self and like how do you feel within your body and how at peace, at rest, do you feel? And when your posture is off, and we see it all the time with people, and they just don't feel stable, they don't feel secure. There's a sense of uncertainty, and then if you add pain to that, it's like, well, I don't know when the pain's going to hit next. I don't know if it's going to, like, if I'm just going to go down, tie my shoelaces, or if I'm going to get out of bed and all of a sudden it's there. And it's like, that causes stress in and of itself. The lack of sleep or sleep deprivation, that, causes an increase in stress as well. And then if you're, trying to sit and let's say you work and you're in pain, from that, then it's like, well, when do you rest? When does your body and brain get a chance to turn it off? And you think of something like yoga, the original, this is going towards the, maybe the woo side, a little bit woo woo, but it's, the chakras aligning and, having that all in harmony and having sort of, all of our, bodily systems in synergy and in good energy. And, the practice of yoga in terms of just trying to clear the restrictions of our physiology in order to get to nirvana or to get to the sense of peace and at rest where we don't have those limitations or those things imposed on us. So while we don't, we're not necessarily going there in our therapy, it's a place that a lot of clients, they're pursuing that, and it's peace of mind. And when we think of like Maslow's hierarchy in terms of like meeting needs, if we don't have our physiological needs met and we're always in this constant stress of poor posture, pain that goes along with that, limitations that go along with that, whether it's heavy legs or something else, then yeah, it all adds up.
Yeah. And adds up and then compounds, right? Like over time too, so it's just a lot of times it just gets worse and worse and worse or, or to a much higher degree. Yeah, as time goes on. So yeah, it's gonna be a tough thing to deal with. Like, chronic fatigue syndromes, restless leg, things that we'll see that are issues that compound over time, because of everything you just said.
Are there any stress related symptoms that you guys see?
Headaches, number one. And a lot of that is when your head is heavy, it's hanging forward. Number one, you're not getting proper blood flow in, but you're also not letting lymphatic fluid come out. So like you're just keeping the garbage in your head and you're not getting fresh oxygen. And it's really easy. I mean, you can just sit slumped for even a minute and feel the pressure back here and here, or you can go against a wall and put your shoulders and your heels and like let your head go against that wall. And you can almost feel the draining happening in your head and you come away just feeling lighter just by, giving yourself that alignment against a plumb surface and just letting everything get in and out that we need. Like we're just a nice little roadway inside and we need to keep everything uncongested, no traffic jams.
Yeah, especially if that's like related to like upper trapezius tightness, right? Like you have a lot of people say, I carry my stress in my neck or my shoulders. So when they get stressed, you feel more tension. It's because those muscles are already compensatorily tight, right? So then if you have a stressor that creates this stress response in the body that does cause you to tense or, cortisol levels to rise, like you were talking about before, Paul, that vagal nerve response, and then if there's already a baseline level of tightness in the area, abnormal level of tightness, then that stress response is going to feed into that, and that's where a lot of people feel that, and either tension headaches, Karen, like you're saying, or, just neck aches or shoulder aches, and lower back is another common area that what people say, carry my stress in the lower back. Well, it's because the lower back's another area of the body that is a very common overcompensator for muscle dysfunction under facilitation, either in the upper body, so above the lower back, or anything down below that's not facilitating properly. So yeah, another big area. And then I think another area too is like the psoas, iliopsoas complex, that hip flexor muscle. That's where we find a lot of clientele carry tension or stress. That is really fascinating that when we help people release or lengthen that psoas, I know you've had this, Carrie, and we have a lot of people who feel like emotional, like after that psoas lets go or releases, or, that people just have tears run down their eyes. Like, I even know I'm not sad, I'm crying, but it's just that, the saying the issues get stored in the tissues kind of thing, as you release these chronically tight areas or areas that can have tension fed into them from external stressors, it is a release for the body. It's a recovery. you know, in that sense, the
Yeah. I think
expiration.
that's
Yeah.
I think that's a good point because you know, in general, like in our Western model, a lot of times we like to think of, you know, cause and effect, and so we think of things directionally. And I would say that from our perspective, you know, there's poor posture creating stress, but then there's also stress creating poor posture. So it's mind body as well as it is body mind.
Two-way
And
street.
you know, when we're working with people, then sure, like, you know, there's a lot of expression and people want to tell us, you know, a lot of what's going on and so forth. And it's good to get that out. We're not doing psychology necessarily. But at the same time, as they change their physiology, as they change their posture, improve it, you know, like Carrie Ann was describing, you know, just using something as, you know, a tool for alignment, um, then all of a sudden their psychology changes. All of a sudden their state and mood change. And it's like, that's such a killer thing. I was just describing this to a person the other day where, you know, it's not uncommon where we get people to come in and they're totally stressed. They're totally, you know, just mean and ornery and like don't want to deal with anybody and just like, you know, it's their first time coming in. It's like, okay, I get this one. And then, you know, you go through and you work with them, and then by the time they're leaving, they're like a totally different person. You know, all that stress came off. They feel much better. Their body is like in a much better place. And it's like, you know, 100 pounds, 200 pounds was taken off their back, you know,
Yeah.
because they were just so burdened down and stuck. And I would say that's, to me, that's one of the big things about what we do is the relationship of if we have a fight or flight system in our body, right, where, you know, whether it's a saber-tooth tiger or whether it's the stock market or whether it's, you know, the ongoing elections right now, it's like, okay, those are stressors, but it's how do we respond? How are we equipped? How is our physiology able to cope and adapt with that? And do we have ways to, you know, channel that out? And, you know, that thing about the, you know, energy systems and everything flowing, right? So it's like, are we ready, you know, to do those things? And then through the movement, through the exercise and so forth, then you're also like having those releases and getting rid of, you know, the hormones and whatnot that are creating stress. But just being in good alignment also gives you flexibility, which I think translates into the brain of, oh, I have choices. I have flexibility. I can move right. I can move left. I can move backwards. I can move forward. I can rotate. I can spin. I can, you know, do all these different things, which is kind of, again, relates back to the brain thing, which I have options. I have 360 degrees of which to operate and make decisions from rather than being stuck in just, you know, on this one course. So we think of like a posture that's just in flexion and stuck and they can't turn and move. It's like, well, that translates, you know, metaphorically into your decision-making ability in the normal living, in normal, you know, to all these stressors that are going on versus if you're in a better place, then yeah, I have choices. I can breathe, I can move, I can do whatever I need to right now.
Yeah, you're trapped, you're not cornered, right? Which, like you say, that listen to that fight or flight. If you're stuck, you know, your body's gonna freak out. It says, "Uh-oh, you know, I'm cornered. I'm a target. I'm you know, vulnerable in that sense." Yeah. And then to your point too, not just, you know, that release pod, but then building a resiliency too, right? Like stressors are always gonna be part of our life. You know, we're not gonna ever not deal with stress, but if your body is aligned and mechanically, biomechanically efficient, and your muscles are all balanced systemically, you're healthy, carrying like you were talking about earlier, your body is going to be more resilient to being impacted by those stressors, right? You'll be able to handle it better physically in that sense too. So that's something we talk with our clients about, is just building a resiliency to it.
I think at the heart of that is honestly less fear. If you're stuck, if you don't have the ability to go in different directions, there's fear underlying everything you do all day long.
Yeah.
And if you are free and can do, you know, move any way, then that fear just kind of goes away. And then you can do all of the things you want to do. And so that's a really
Freedom.
empowering feeling.
Yeah, it's freedom.